Why do great companies fail? We usually think we know the answer. We imagine they get lazy, they become arrogant, they stop innovating, or they stop listening to their customers. But what if the opposite is true? What if the very things that make a company great, diligently listening to its best customers, systematically investing in its most profitable, highest quality products, and aggressively pursuing market leadership, are the very things that can lead directly to its catastrophic failure? This is the shocking, tragic, and profoundly important puzzle at the heart of Clayton Christensen's masterpiece, The Innovator's Dilemma. This is not just a business book. It is a work of deep philosophy that reads like a Greek tragedy. It is a story about how virtue can become a fatal flaw, how reason can lead to ruin, and how the relentless pursuit of success can be a perfectly designed trap. This is a journey into one of the most powerful and counterintuitive ideas in modern thought, an idea that explains why giants fall and why the future is so often built by the outsiders that nobody saw coming. To understand the innovator's dilemma, you have to understand that it is a story of good management. This is not a book about incompetent leaders or dysfunctional companies. It is a book about brilliant, well-managed companies that made all the right decisions according to the best business school textbooks and still lost everything. Christensen opens by looking at the history of the computer disk drive industry. This industry over several decades was a scene of absolute carnage. One after another, the dominant market-leading companies that were praised by the business press for their excellence, would suddenly and inexplicably collapse, seemingly overnight. And they were always replaced by a small, upstart company that came out of nowhere. Take the example of Digital Equipment Corporation, or DC. In the 1980s, DC was a titan. They were the masters of the mini-computer, a powerful machine that was the backbone of business computing. They were a brilliant, well-run company. They listened intently to their best customers, who were always asking for mini-computers that were faster, more powerful, and had more storage. And DC delivered, year after year, with better and better products, and they charged a premium price for them. At the same time, a new and frankly quite pathetic technology was emerging, the personal computer. The first PCs were, by every metric that DC's customers cared about, a joke. They were slow, they had almost no storage, and they were seen as toys. When DC's engineers would show these new PCs to their best customers, the customers would laugh. They couldn't use them for their complex business applications. So, following the principles of good management, DC's executives ignored the PC. They focused their resources on their high-end, high-profit mini-computers, just as their best customers wanted. It was the rational, logical, and correct decision to make, and it was the decision that killed their company. Because while they were busy making better and better mini-computers for their existing customers, the personal computer, that little toy, was getting better at a shocking rate. It found a new market of people who couldn't afford a mini-computer. It got a foothold, it got better and better. And eventually, it got so good that it could do the jobs that the mini-computer used to do. And by then, for DC, it was far, far too late. They had been disrupted. This is the innovator's dilemma. It is the tragic paradox where the very practices of good management can lead directly to a company's demise. To solve this puzzle, Christensen gives us a powerful new vocabulary. He explains that there are two, and only two, fundamental types of innovation, and understanding the difference between them is the key to the entire book. The first and most common type is sustaining innovation. This is the kind of innovation that all good companies are focused on. It is the process of making a good product better. It's a new iPhone with a better camera. It's a new car model with better gas mileage. It's a new television with a sharper screen. Sustaining innovations happen on a predictable trajectory of improvement. They are the innovations that your existing best customers want and are willing to pay more for. All the internal processes of a successful company, its sales team, its marketing, its engineering, are optimized to produce a steady stream of sustaining innovations. But there is a second, much rarer, and much more dangerous kind of innovation. And this is what Christensen famously called disruptive innovation. A disruptive innovation is not a better product. In fact, on the key performance metrics that the mainstream market cares about, a disruptive innovation is almost always worse when it first appears. But it has a different set of attributes. It is usually simpler, it is cheaper, and it is more convenient. And because of this, it finds a foothold in a new or an overlooked part of the market. It appeals to customers who couldn't afford the mainstream product or who were non-consumers. The classic example is the transistor radio. When the first tiny, tinny-sounding transistor radios came out, the established giants of the radio industry like RCA looked at them with contempt. Their big, beautiful, high-fidelity console radios sounded infinitely better. Their best customers, who were wealthy adults, had no interest in a cheap little portable radio with terrible sound quality, so the big companies ignored it. But the transistor radio found a new market: teenagers. Teenagers didn't care about perfect audio fidelity. They cared about being able to listen to rock and roll music with their friends away from their parents. The transistor radio was a worse product, but it was cheap, it was portable, and for this new market, it was good enough. And then, the disruptive technology started to improve. The sound quality got better, the prices came down, and eventually the transistor radio got so good that it started to move up market. It started to become good enough for the mainstream customers. And by the time the big established companies like RCA finally realized that this little toy was a serious threat, it was too late. The entire market had been transformed underneath them. So why does this happen over and over again? Why are the big, smart, successful companies seemingly incapable of seeing this pattern and responding to it? Christensen's brilliant answer is that they are trapped. They are trapped in what he calls their value network. A company's value network is the ecosystem of its customers, its suppliers, its investors, and its own internal profit model. A successful company is successful because it has perfectly optimized itself to serve its value network. Its entire structure is designed to deliver the high-quality, high-profit products that its best customers want. Now imagine you are a smart, ambitious product manager at a big, successful company like DC in the 1980s. You go to your boss with two different proposals. Your first proposal is for a new, faster mini-computer. Your best customers are clamoring for it. The sales team can project millions of dollars in high-margin sales. The project will be a huge success and will likely get you a big promotion. Your second proposal is to create a small, cheap personal computer. Your best customers don't want it. The projected profit margins are tiny, the market for it is small and uncertain, and the product itself is, by your own company standards, a piece of junk. Which project do you think your boss, a rational and intelligent manager, is going to approve? Of course, they are going to approve the mini-computer project. It is the logical, profitable, and correct business decision. And in making that correct decision, they are planting the seeds of their own destruction. This is the tragic heart of the innovator's dilemma. It is an organizational and a cultural problem. A big, successful company is like a large, healthy body, and a disruptive innovation is like a strange, foreign organism. The body's immune system, its financial metrics, its resource allocation processes, its sales incentives, is perfectly designed to identify and kill the disruptive innovation because it doesn't fit the existing model. Good management, in this context, becomes a force for suppressing the very innovations that are necessary for long-term survival. A History of Disruption. The Invaders from Below. The book is filled with powerful, detailed case studies that show this exact pattern playing out, again and again, in different industries. Christensen's original and most detailed research was on the computer disk drive industry. He showed how the giants who made the big 14-inch disk drives for mainframe computers were completely destroyed by the new companies who made the smaller 8-inch drives for mini-computers. And then, those new giants were, in turn, destroyed by the companies who made the 5.25-inch drives for personal computers, and so on. In each wave, the established leaders, by listening to their best customers, dismissed the new, smaller, and initially inferior technology as a toy. And in each wave, that toy got better and eventually ate their world. He shows the same pattern in the mechanical excavator industry. For decades, the market was dominated by massive, powerful steam shovels that were operated by a complex system of cables and pulleys. When the first, smaller, hydraulic excavators came out, they were weak and unreliable. The big, established companies looked at them and laughed. Their biggest customers, the big mining companies, couldn't use them. But the hydraulic technology found a new market with small residential contractors who just needed to dig a small trench. It was a market the big companies had never cared about. The hydraulic excavators got a foothold. The technology improved at a rapid pace, and eventually, they became so powerful and reliable that they completely replaced the old cable-operated machines. almost all of the old established companies went bankrupt. He tells the story of the steel industry. The big integrated steel corporations like US Steel were massive, complex operations. They were disrupted by a new kind of company called a mini-mill. Mini-mills used a cheaper, simpler technology to melt down scrap metal from old cars and appliances to make low-quality steel, like rebar. The big steel companies were happy to let them have this low-profit, garbage part of the market, but the mini-mill technology got better and better, and slowly, but surely, they moved up market, producing higher and higher quality steel, until they had taken over almost the entire industry, driving many of the old giants into bankruptcy. The Philosopher's Toolkit: How to Survive Disruption. So, if you are the leader of a large, successful company, are you doomed? Is there any way to escape the innovator's dilemma? Christensen's final section is a philosophical toolkit, a guide for how established companies can learn to manage and even harness the power of disruption. His central piece of advice is a radical one. He argues that you cannot solve the innovator's dilemma from within the existing organization. The immune system of the mothership is simply too powerful. The only way to succeed is to create a separate, autonomous, and independent organization to pursue the disruptive opportunity. You have to take a small, powerful team, give them the resources they need, and then send them far away from the main company. This new organization must have its own, different profit formula. It must be allowed to celebrate small wins and to serve small markets. It must have its own culture, free from the processes and values of the parent company that would otherwise crush it. In effect, you have to create your own internal startup, your own disruptor, and you have to give it the freedom to potentially compete with, and even destroy, your core business. This requires an incredible amount of foresight, humility, and courage from the leadership of the parent company. It is one of the hardest things in the world to do, but Christensen argues that it is the only way to survive in a world of constant disruptive change. The ultimate message of the innovator's dilemma is a profound and humbling philosophy that applies far beyond the world of business. It is a lesson for our own lives. How often are we trapped in our own personal value networks? How often are we so focused on sustaining our current success, our current identity, that we fail to see the disruptive new opportunities that are emerging on the margins? Are we listening only to our best customers, our friends and family who want us to stay the same, and ignoring the strange, new, and initially inferior paths that might lead to our future growth? The book is a powerful and timeless call for humility, for foresight, and for the courage to embrace change, even when it is uncomfortable. It is a deep inquiry into the very nature of success and failure. If you believe that we must understand the forces of disruption to navigate our rapidly changing world, then you are in the right place. Welcome to Geeky Philosopher. Subscribe and let's continue to explore the powerful mental models that can help us see the future more clearly.